Hello everyone and welcome to Sipz and Stories. My name is Elizabeth and in today's video I will be doing my winter TBR. So winter is in full swing where I live and already we are on our third or fourth snowstorm. I've been cooped up in the house all week and I am losing my mind. But one way that I get through this time of year is by having all of these books around me. Cozy books, fairy tale retellings, charming books, children's books. I think reading really helps me get through this time of year. In fact, I really don't know what people do at this time of year that don't like to read, don't like to sit inside all day reading or knitting scarves. I don't know what people do. So grab your favorite warm beverage of choice as I discuss these wintry reads. The first book on my winter TBR is The Way Past Winter by Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave. And I first heard about this book back on Darling Desi's channel, and I absolutely love that channel. She has so many fantastic recommendations, especially in middle grade. And when she talked about this book last year, I immediately put it on my TBR, and then I remembered to get it this year because it sounded so good. And I got this really beautiful hardback edition from Chronicle Press. Chronicle Press is one of my favorite publishers. I like this edition even more than the UK cover, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it just has a little bit of a shimmer to it. It's just so beautiful in person, and Chronicle Press always publishes the most beautiful editions. But what is this book about? So this book is about a little girl named Mila and her sisters Pippa and Sanna and their brother Oscar. And Oscar has been kidnapped. So the girls go on this adventure in this cold wilderness to go rescue their brother. And also it's a little like the Chronicles of Narnia, where it has been winter for a long time, for years and years, and spring has not come back. So I find that really interesting as well. Looking forward to this, and based on Desi's review, it does sound absolutely charming and adorable. Another middle grade read that I'm looking forward to reading this winter is The Secrets of Winterhouse by Ben Guterson. This is the follow-up to his first book in the series called Winterhouse, which I read last year, and I loved that book. So much so that I wanted to read the sequel this year, and it's actually part of a trilogy. There's 3 books in this series, and I rarely get tied up in series just because I have so many books on my TBR, so I don't like to bog myself down with YA series, with children's series, but I had to make an exception for the Winterhouse because it was just so darn good and I loved it so much. So what are these books about? They're about a little girl named Elizabeth Summers, and in the first book she is living with her really sinister aunt and uncle, so think Harry Potter and the Dursleys, and one holiday season or one winter break she is invited to stay at this really beautiful ski resort called the Winterhouse, and the man that invites her is named Northbridge Falls. So he is this famous explorer and just kind of larger than life character. So much fun. And the Winterhouse just has everything wintry that you can imagine. It's a ski resort, it has sleigh rides, ice skating, and then inside the house it has a 5-star restaurant, there's parties, there's theater, and then my favorite part of the Winterhouse is the 3-story library. So since these books are mysteries and Elizabeth and her good friend Freddie are going all over the Winterhouse at night, I love those scenes at night in the library. And so in that first book, Elizabeth and Freddie are solving a mystery, of course, and they have this book of clues. And one of the great things about the Winterhouse series is that Ben Guterson includes all of these puzzles and pictograms and word ladders, and so you, the reader, can solve them along with Elizabeth and Freddie. So much fun. So it's like Nancy Drew on steroids. I absolutely love this book, and I just really love the atmosphere. And like Harry Potter, each book Elizabeth learns a little more about her history, her families, her special abilities, and her gifts. So I don't want to spoil it if you haven't read the first one, but these books are a lot of fun. I am really looking forward to this next installment. Another children's classic that I cannot wait to dive back into is Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, the first in his Dark Materials series. And I have not read these books in a long time. I mentioned them in my classics video, how much I loved this series, especially since HBO has come out with that miniseries with Lin-Manuel Miranda and Ruth Wilson. And I really thought they were going to come out with a third installment, the Amber Spyglass, this year, but they didn't. So I thought I'd go back and reread the entire series so that I am prepared when they come out with that final installment. And Philip Pullman's writing is just on a whole another level. So yes, this is a children's series, but it's so good, so well written that I think a lot of adults would enjoy it as well. Plus, I recently purchased these really special UK editions. So this is the first one, Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. And it's going to be hard for me to call it Northern Lights. I'm used to The Golden Compass. But I love the cover art and the foiling. And you can kind of pick these up secondhand on eBay very inexpensively. Here's the second one, The Subtle Knife. Gorgeous. Love this cover art. And then here is the third one, Amber Spyglass. So as you can see, they've been read before, but so happy to have these editions in my collection now, and I'm really excited to reread this series this year. The next book that I would love to read this winter is The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, and this is one of the Sanna Annukka editions, illustrated by famous Finnish artist Sanna Annukka. And I showcased these editions a long time ago, maybe in last year's Christmas video, I think, holiday video. I'll link it below, but there's also the Fir Tree and the Nutcracker in these Sanna Annukka editions, and they are all gorgeous naked hardback books. And of course you can give them to children, but I personally like them for myself as an adult as coffee table books. I read the first one, The Fir Tree, back in 2020, enjoyed that one a lot. And then this past year I read The Nutcracker by E.T. Hoffman in anticipation of going to see the ballet again this year. And I really enjoyed The Nutcracker. I had never read it before. It was really interesting and so much different than the ballet. So I highly recommend that one as well. But I have never read The Snow Queen. This is another one of those classic fairy tales that I have never read. And I like it because it's one of the few fairy tales that has a wintry theme. I think a lot of fairy tales are perfect for the winter, but I like that this is specifically about a snow queen. And I've heard nothing but good things about this fairy tale, and reading it in this really special edition is going to be so wonderful. I'll go ahead and show you some close-up shots. If you'd like to see all these special Sanna Annukka editions, I will link my 2020 holiday video where I showcase all three of these books. But again, those geometric patterns and artwork, beautiful. Oh my gosh, I am so addicted to her artwork. This time of year, January, February, was a nice time to read this classic fairy tale, especially since I believe it is the basis, or the Frozen is based off of this fairy tale, I believe. So my plan is to read this and then go do a Frozen 1 and 2 marathon. I think it'll be a lot of fun. The next couple of books I have are adult winter reads. The first one is The Thousand Doors of January by Alix E. Harrow. And of course, I just picked this for my winter reads video because of the title, 1,000 Doors of January. You didn't think I was going to read this book in August, did you? So again, this one is one I've been meaning to read for the past couple years. It feels like everyone's read it, everyone's already discussed it. So I feel a little late to the party, but I just was waiting for January to roll around again so I could read it once and for all. And it does sound a lot like The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So if you are a fan of Erin Morgenstern's writing, Starless Sea, The Night Circus, I think you will really enjoy this one. I read the first chapter and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's not quite at the level of Erin Morgenstern, but it's in that same vein, in that same genre. Really enjoying this. It's about a little girl named January, and at the beginning of the book she's 7, and then when the story really starts she's 17. But she is the ward of this really rich businessman named Mr. Locke, and her father is alive, but he's always out around the world, kind of like Indiana Jones, tracking down all these historical artifacts for Mr. Locke. And so January and Mr. Locke live in this really beautiful mansion with all of Mr. Locke's just museum pieces basically from all over the world. And as the story opens, when she's a little girl, she writes in her journal, and then she discovers this door out in the middle of the woods, or on this field, and she goes through it and she ends up in another world at the seaside, this kind of like seaside village, and then she comes back through the door and it's gone forever. So again, I'm getting very Starless Sea vibes from this one. Alix Harrow's writing, I won't lie, is an acquired taste. She's very tongue-in-cheek and very precocious. So I've heard a couple of reviews of people just not liking her writing style. So I would recommend just flipping through it at the bookstore, see if it's for you. I enjoy it. I like her kind of tongue-in-cheek writing style. But again, it can be a little cloying, a little annoying for some people. But I'm really enjoying this so far, and I can't wait to finish it this month, of course. The next book that I would like to read this winter is The Snow Child by, and I can never say this author's name, Eowyn, Ivey. And I heard about this book recently on the Cottage Fairies channel. I don't know if anyone watches her channel like I do. So beautiful. She's like Thoreau out there in the wilderness, here in Washington actually. And she did one of these videos where she just rarely talks about books, but in this video she just talked about all the books that she enjoys reading. And this one, The Snow Child, and I think Thousand Doors of January she mentioned too, just really captured my attention. She made both of these books sound so good, so whimsical, so charming. So I trusted her and I bought this book. And I'm not exactly sure what it's about. I think it is about this young married couple living in Alaska in the wilderness, like during the 1920s, 1930s. And they are on the Pioneer, they're homesteaders. And they lost a child. So at the beginning of the book, they had a stillborn child and the wife is really depressed and she doesn't want to live. And then just on a whim, they go out into the woods and they build this snow child, this child made out of snow. And then they go back home, and then the next day they wake up and the kid is out there, but it's alive and it's a real child. So I'm getting very Pinocchio vibes from this book. It also was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, so I'm expecting it to be well written since it was a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Sometimes that means things, sometimes that doesn't. But looking forward to this. And The Cottage Fairies, she did say that it was very whimsical, very charming. It had elements of a fairy tale to it. Sounds really good, and I am looking forward to it. And then also one little detail that I'm really enjoying is that the page breaks are snowflakes. So I don't know if you can see it there, but instead of a dot or a period, it's a snowflake. How great is that? Looking forward to this, and yeah, I'm hoping it is as good as The Cottage Fairy said it was going to be. And last but not least, the next book that I would like to read this winter is The Winter Solstice by Rosamunde Pilcher. I love Rosamunde Pilcher. She is fast becoming one of my favorite new authors, or new to me authors. And I discovered her thanks to Kate Howe, of course, and she is just a fantastic writer. Her books are historical romances, and they could be very similar to a Nora Roberts or a Danielle Steele, but they're just on a whole nother level because of Rosamunde Pilcher's writing. She's just a fantastic writer who happens to have been pigeonholed into this, you know, women's fiction, historical romance genre, but she is too good of a writer to miss, so I just wanted to do a plug for her. I have read about 3 of her books so far: September, Coming Home, and of course The Shell Seekers, which is her most famous book. You've probably heard of The Shell Seekers. And the thing I love most about Rosamunde Pilcher is that she always includes a multi-generational cast of characters. So in addition to the young people, the lovers, the relationship, the heart of the story, she does talk a lot about the matriarchs and their backstory, and brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews. Then she'll talk about grandchildren, and she'll just do like a little vignette of the grandchild's life at school. Then she'll talk about a beloved housekeeper. So it almost feels a little like Ellen Montgomery, like an adult Ellen Montgomery. And I love her book so much because she has so many glamorous characters. And so I just love like the descriptions of their townhouses in London or in Edinburgh, and then their family estates in Scotland. And then she'll also have characters that just randomly live in Spain or in Italy too. So again, pure fantasy, a lot of fun. And The Winter Solstice is one of the very few Rosamunde Pilcher books I have not read yet. This one gets rave reviews. And of course I picked it because, you know, Winter Solstice, I think it takes place, of course, around the holidays, around the Winter Solstice, December 21st. It's all about people reconnecting, renewing their spirits. And I think it's about a woman named Elfrida Phipps who leaves London for a country village, and she ends up becoming friends with all of these neighbors and getting involved in their lives. Sounds very Rosamunde Pilchery. Looking forward to this. One thing I will say that I absolutely hate about Rosamunde Pilcher books is she just has the worst covers imaginable. And forgive me because this is a thrift store edition, so it's pretty beat up there. But even the modern republished editions of her books are terrible. And so I just feel like telling her publishers, you know, if you had better covers for Rosamunde Pilcher, more people would read her and discover how great she is. So that is just a gripe of mine, but looking forward to reading this winter. Thank you everyone for joining me for my winter TBR. And yes, the winter is definitely not my favorite season, but I find that if you can't beat it, join it. And reading all of these wintry, cozy books is one way that I beat the winter blues. So thank you everyone, have a great day and stay cozy.